Hello, this is David Henry Young. It's June 14th, 2023. It's a Wednesday in the morning in the Philippines. I want to make a video about how I became aware of Israel. I grew up Catholic in Quincy, Massachusetts. Even Jesus and certainly Israel were sort of distant in my life. I went to Mass, I went to Catholic schools, but I didn't have a personal relationship with God. And I knew very little about Israel. It was just a place name that was mentioned infrequently from the pulpit. And fast forward, went in the Marine Corps in 1966. I got out in 1970 and came home after the war in Vietnam. I was a sergeant in the Marines. And I was pretty scared that there was no hope for mankind. The war and what I had experienced and seen and participated in rocked me, and all I wanted to do is get home where it's safe and hide. And so I had a plan. My hiding plan was to go to college because I had no aspirations of college growing up. I was a poor student. They gave me a point in 1966 to let me graduate. Joined the Marine Corps. They ended up sending me to school to fix cryptographic radios after about a 9-month electronics course in San Diego to do that. In other words, they told me, "You're not stupid." Out of 120 men that started boot camp, we graduated 63 after 12 weeks, and in 67, and four graduates received non-infantry jobs. I mean, straight infantry, and I was one of them. It shocked me, and they were sending me to school to fix, electronic school to repair cryptography radios. Go figure. And so got through the war. Got through my time in the Marine Corps and got out in 1970 in the early spring, in May. And in my hiding, I said, okay, I'll go to college because my high school record was horrible academically. If I liked stuff, I was a poor student. I had very poor. On how to study and all that. If I liked something, I'd go to the class. If I didn't, I skipped the class and went to the library and just read books that appealed to me. And I was a rebel, to my own horrible chagrin, and I just want to do what I want to do, and that that can really lead to some, at least in my case. It can lead to some awful situations, and but we're not talking about those situations. So, I entered Quincy Junior College. It was a new community college in my city of Quincy. I think it was in its third year of operation. They operated out of a defunct old elementary school, freestanding school, brick, lots of paper, surplus paper in rooms, and so they opened up, cleaned it up, and opened it up for schooling. And being a veteran, they were looking for us to come on in and participate in your academic career. So under that guise, I went in there. Personally, privately, I was hiding. I wanted to be around brick and paper because I had no hope for mankind. I believed that we were going to blow ourselves to kingdom come with nuclear weapons. And the little bit that I understand about nuclear warfare was, if you have any chance of surviving it, one of the places you want to be, other than underground, and I had no thought of that, was to be around a lot of serious brick and paper. And this elementary school was that. And that was my mentality. And my surface excuse to go there was I want to repair my horrible academic record. And I did. I ended up with a B average after a couple of years. Well, in that first year, I got a job. The government was, especially for veterans, the government was offering me, okay, you can go answer phones at this place in Quincy, a Jewish community center in Quincy, for 10 hours a week, and we'll pay you, more than the low wage. It was good. I needed a little bit of money. And I'm growing my hair long. I'm trying to hide. And I was just in the office in the Jewish Community Center a couple hours a week, a day, answering telephones in their office, while downstairs in the cellar, and it was down the basement, they had a program going on called The Cellar, and their intent was to get kids off the street and into a safe environment where they could do guerrilla theater and just learn not to do break-in enterings or getting in fights. And it was Quincy was a well-known city. They had its difficulties, about 98,000 people, and so a few times in the first few weeks, the phone never rang. So I'm studying. Well, there would be a ruckus. I could hear it downstairs. And maybe 2 or 3 times I went down, and the kids were getting in serious fights, fist fights. And they could have got maybe 50 kids down there, and they had Mr. Rosen and then 2 gals and a guy as counselors, I guess, to help the kids kind of look at life better than just being a street kid. So I ended up breaking up some fights, and over the course of a couple of weeks, they came upstairs, at the end of their session with the kids or whatever, and they offered me a position. They said, "Well, you want to come down and just help us?" And I said, "Sure." And so I didn't answer phones anymore, and I became a counselor. To the kids, and I'm a former Marine, and they find that out, and oh my goodness, then you're perfect, and and I helped out quite a bit, and I like doing that, and so one of the gals, Isabel, we ended up having a relationship, dating, and we had good relationship, and come to find out that one of the things in her background, she was from Connecticut, and I don't think I've ever been to Connecticut. And well, when the 6-Day War happened, it's from June 5th to 10th, 1967, right after the war, and they had, if you know anything about the war, Israel was a very, very small place anyway, but they had captured the Sinai, they captured the Golan Heights. They expanded their living space by 50 times, or whatever. It was huge. And they beat 4 armies that they were gonna kill them and send them into the sea. I mean, it's just one of those miracle things. Just like in 1948 when they defeated, I think it was 5 armies. It's just, and again, do I believe in God? Well, I believe that there was a God, and I just didn't have a relationship in that way in life. And so I was coming to work one day at the Jewish Community Center, and I'm walking up the steps, granite steps, and inside the lobby, big lobby, and at the end of the lobby on the wall was a giant travel poster, enormous, showing the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem, and something hit my heart that I got to go there. You know, I got to go there. And I don't know anything about Israel. I don't. We never, you know, the only thing I knew was that before this now, before when I was getting ready to leave Quincy to go to California for my job in the Marine Corps after boot camp, I had like 8 days off, and I went down the street to the Tony's Barber Shop, and you know, where kids go for since I can remember, and just me and Tony, and hey Dave, you know, how you doing? Wow, you look great, you know, and all this other, gained weight in boot camp, and I look very different, much more healthy, and I didn't have much hair, but yeah, I was going to get a haircut. And he's sort of, you know, cut my hair, and then it's just me and him in the shop, and the little radio sitting up by the mirror that, you know, you're sitting in front of. Israel has just destroyed the Egyptian Air Force on the ground, and the war had started, and it was a shock. It was, you know, it was a preemptive war. They knew that they were going to be attacked by 4 armies, and they just preempted. And if you know anything about, look up the 6-Day War if you don't know anything about it. It was stunning. It was a shock of all shocks. The hatred against the Jews and all of that, you know, it just gets more and more compounded because they get shocked and shocked. Well, and I remember when it came, the broadcast hit us, and I started crying, and I said to Tony, I said, those are God's people, they're going to kick ass and take names. And what do I know? I mean, but it came out of a deep place in me. And I wasn't like that. I just wasn't like that. And then fast forward in the story, 4 years later, and I'm out of the Marine Corps. It's now 1971, and I'm doing good in school, and I have some kind of vision of doing something. I want to teach. You know, but I'm going to stick with going to school. The whole sense of hiding went away, and so now it's the summertime. I'm off school, and I'm having a relationship with this gal, and a really nice gal, and find out that she spent 2 years in Israel as a volunteer. At the end of the 6-Day War on June 10th. 1967, Israel as a country, they put out a massive call to the United States and to Europe for any high school graduate, because they were graduating during that week, all over the country. You talk about, you know, the goodness of God and the land of the living. It's just why wasn't the war in October, or, you know, and to come to Israel. For 2 years, all expenses will take care of you. Will, you know, help us survey the land that we've been endowed with now, and that we won in the war. And she was one of the ones that answered the call. And you know, she helped build a couple of kibbutzim, and certainly one, I think it was 2. Those settlements, the kibbutzim is plural. And they're communities. They're communities, and you know, you could have the community would be focused on, let's say, fisheries or orange groves, or very agriculturally oriented at that time. And she told me all about it, and I told her, you know, because again, we met in the Jewish Community Center. I had this impression on my heart, I've got to go there. I don't know how to go there. I'm not a traveler. Yeah, the only time I was out of Quincy, Massachusetts, where I grew up, except one time right after high school, was go to Chicago for a week with a friend to look up his girlfriend. who was going to school there, and I'm a Quincy kid, and I wasn't outside the Quincy. Most of my family, my brother was in the service, so he was out of the Quincy, but my three sisters, you know, except for something extraordinary, their whole life was in Quincy, in around, you know, New England at the furthest. And so she said, well, this is how you do it. Go to the Boston, you go to the Jewish, the Jewish secretary in Boston, and you just say, I want to go to Israel, what do I do, and so forth. And I don't know nothing about traveling internationally. So I had to learn all these things. I got a passport and everything. And they said, we're offering a great little thing here. It's called 12-week tour and dig. So you'll dig in the Negev, the south, the desert, semi-arid desert in Israel, in a biblical place, digging and exposing and learning about a particular biblical place called, well, in this case it was called Beersheba, and for 10 weeks. And for 2 weeks, at the end of that, we'll give you a tour like you're not going to get on a regular tour package. It's really amazing the things that they showed us. And every weekend we had off, and so we toured around the country quite a bit on our own. We just couldn't go to the Deep Sinai. So, you know, this love of Israel and the Jewish people it was just, I felt like I was in heaven in a way. It's just something other, really nice. And everything I was learning, all these places, the fact that Israel was real, I mean, that's what got me. It wasn't just a figment of your imagination. It wasn't something you hear on the news. It's a real place. Now, this is personal. This is my personal view and feelings, okay? Sure, I watched the news. I was, you know, I'm a veteran. I know what's going on in the world, you know, the Berlin crisis at that time. Well, I didn't know anything about Israel. Like, it's almost zero. And when I say that it hit me, I'm there, but it hit me deeply. It's real. It's a real place. It's like, you know, how old was I? I was 21, 22. I'm just a kid. I've been through a lot of stuff, but I'm just a kid. A very fortunate kid that didn't die in the war, that, you know, I could have died probably 4 or 5 times right off the top of my head. I have a scar on my neck. I mean, you know, I'm a veteran, you know, and you're fortunate to make it through boot camp. People die, it's just in training all the time. So anyways, I'm there, and I'm a little older than most of the 300 kids on the dig. And the leaders of the dig, you know, they singled me out real quick, and maybe they had some kind of background on everybody, but that makes sense, I suppose. The whole sense of security. You know, having 300 different people all of a sudden just come to the country. Well, they want to know a little bit about you. And I'm sure they did a check on me. And so they sort of wanted me to be a leader, and okay, but let's just, I'm just going to grab my trowel and do what you told me to do. And it was great. It was great. It made an impact on my life, like, it changed my life. I was going to continue at Tel Aviv University. They accepted my credits, my first year credits at Quincy Junior College, and they said, wow, we got a great archaeology program. You could just, you know, and I had a whole view of there's my life. I loved Israel. I loved everything about it. I disliked some things too, but, you know, in any place you're going to have to deal with the good and the bad. Well, most of the stuff I saw was good in a big, powerful way. And then I got a phone call. I was working on a kibbutz, waiting for an Ulpan, which is to learn the language and the culture formally, officially. That's like a 3 or 4 month program, 6 months sometimes, maybe even actually this program I was entering into was a 1 year program. But it wasn't available to me. I had to wait 3 months for that. And I couldn't enter school because it wasn't the time to enter. So what do? I just offered my physical body and my heart to work on a kibbutz, and I went to kibbutz Kinneret. Kinneret is the Hebrew name for the Sea of Galilee, the Kinneret, and at the I think the eastern end or the southern end, however you look at Galilee, Sea of Galilee, it flowed right into their kibbutz. They had fisheries there. They had banana plantations, Canary Island bananas, really good variety. And I worked in the banana plantation. I worked in the scullery, and I was washing dishes. You know, next to me is a general. He's just a regular guy. Yeah, I asked him what were they, doing pots and pans one day. And I don't know him. I'm meeting him as I do this, and I said, well, what do you do? He said, well, I'm a brigadier. And oh, really? Yeah. And this is my country, and they need somebody to do the dishes right now, and I have time off, and I'm here. I mean, it's just little tidbits of, informing conversations with people just go so deep into you sometimes if you're open, I guess, and I was open. I was an open book. I'm remembering one time we were in Tel Aviv. We had to get to the other side of Tel Aviv. It's a big city. To get to the not Federal Express, I used to work for them, the American Express, to get some money. One of the kids I was hanging out with was getting some money so we could have money, We had taken an army bus there, and that, you just hitchhike in and they pick you up. And so I remember it was me and Elaine and Michael. And Michael had relatives in Israel, and that's another story. It's a wonderful story. I get to meet people. And he knew some French, and Elaine knew a little bit of Hebrew, and we're talking to this old woman, wonderful little old woman at a bus stop. And she knew very little English, and just which way how do we get, because we had to get there in like 10, 15 minutes, or the place is going to be closed for the weekend. And I remember turning my head, and I see this really, gallant kind of a man walking, really nicely, with a nice shirt and a tie and short sleeve. It was a warm day. This is the summertime. It's probably July. And with a valise, on one hand, and he's like walking in a very, in a marching kind of a walk, very purposeful and awesome. And I had turned my head, and I see him coming. He's about 20 feet away. He telescoped what the situation was. I mean, literally. And I watched this, and in perfect timing, he's walking like this, and one hand goes into his pocket. He pulls out a 20-pound note, and he looks at me in the eyeball just as he's passing. He gives me the 20-pound note and says, "Take bus number 6." And he just keeps on going. That's a little bitty moment, but my whole time in Israel, I was there from June to September, and then I had to go home to America, and I was very disappointed. But that kind of situation was happening almost every day. There were situations like that. Not that you needed this or you needed that, but just really things that impacted you. And you just kept on going. You didn't spend too much time going, wow. Well, after the first 20 wows of being there, we just calmed down and saying, this is really a different place. We don't know anything about God. We don't know anything about Holy Spirit. We don't know anything about anything except, what's in front of us and what we're into. And looking back, I'm a Christian now, and I'm, the Holy Spirit filled me back in 74, and I've had a very wonderful Christian life with all kinds of ups and downs, and I'm in the Philippines now for working into my 7th year, and I've never been happier in all my life. And I've been really happy before, but this is like a whole nother level of walking with the Lord. And so we get to the place to get the money, the Express, and we, it starts another time. And so I'm going to look at my notes here. Yeah, the whole idea, what I just wanted to say is that when you realize that the moon is not cream cheese or yellow blubber, but is real, or you realize that you got to obey the traffic laws, or you might die, or you might see people die, you become aware of life. And awareness, I mean, how many levels of awareness is there? Probably 1,000,000. You just become, in life, you just become more and more aware of life. And then when the Holy Spirit gets a hold of you, and you realize Jesus is alive from the dead, He is the Lord, He is coming back, there's a life, everything's alive, and yet you got to have 3 meals a day or 2 or whatever you're doing, and you got to work your life and do who you are and do good and not bad and do what's right and not wrong. It just gets better and better and better. And I'll never forget, and I know I'm going back to Israel one day. Probably with the Lord when He comes down to do some stuff that's in the Bible. And I just be encouraged that if you don't know God, or you don't know that He knows you, you just turn to Him and cry out to Him and say, Jesus, I want you. If you're real and I want reality, please, Lord, come into my life. Take my life. I give it to you. And the rest is going to be His story with you. It's history. And it's the best thing you can possibly do. So that's all I wanted to say. This is David Henry Young signing off until I talk again. Love you all. Bye-bye.